Should be 6 now. Yes, it is. All right. Success. That's not a word. Success. That's a word. Hey everyone, and welcome to the BPD Bunch Live. This episode is brought to you by our amazing supporters on Patreon. So I want to give a huge shout out to them for making the BPD Bunch happen. I'm Xannie, the creator and host of the show, and today I am here to chat with you, our audience, for an AMA. Now, I had gathered some questions ahead of time from our followers on Instagram, but I noticed that there's already a question in the chat, so I am just going to go ahead and start with that. If we need to fill anything in with the questions that you asked ahead of time, we've got that, but anyone wants to add a question, just go into the chat box and type it in, and hopefully we will get to it. So the first one is, how long were you in therapy until it felt like you were getting better? My therapist is great, but I feel like we've tried everything and nothing helps me. So this is one of those things where there's kind of like a literal answer, which is like, I started therapy when I was 13 and I didn't start really feeling better until I was 27. So you can do that math. I will say though, I didn't actually do therapy like consistently that whole time. It's kind of hard to answer because I think at different periods in my life, therapy wasn't working for different reasons. And I think when you're assessing like the efficacy of something like that, you have to take those kind of things into account. So like when I was a teenager, I really didn't take therapy all that seriously. I didn't really put in the work. And I really needed something that was skills-based. And even when I started finding places that were able to help me and maybe qualified to help me, I think one of the biggest things that made a difference was finding a therapist that I actually had a real connection with, because somebody can be really great at teaching skills, but there's something to be said for having chemistry with your therapist. And I'm still seeing a therapist now, and we've been working together since 2017. And I think I owe a lot to, she is a DBT therapist, and I found DBT was very helpful, but I kind of go through phases too. It's not like once something starts working, all of a sudden it's great. I think when I first started DBT, it seemed amazing at first because there were a couple skills that I applied and it seemed like they really worked. But as I started to dig into some of the deeper parts of having BPD, it was like, okay, this doesn't feel like it's working as much. And I think there are some things where it really takes a lot of repetition and a lot of work, and it feels like things aren't progressing, partially because a lot of the progress is so small. So I guess I would say to the person who asked the question, I would ask yourself what it is that you feel like is holding you back. If it's something to do with your ability to engage with the material itself, like, are you able to understand it, or is it more of an issue of like putting things into action? And also consider comorbidities. I have ADHD on top of having BPD, so that's part of why a lot of things have been kind of difficult for me to put into action, because I needed to manage that also, and I'm still working to manage that. I actually feel like ADHD is almost more of an issue these days than the BPD is. So I don't know if that answered the question or not, but it does take a long time, and put in the effort. I think you will get there. All right. Now we go to our questions of awesome. What is this one? When you first thought of creating the BPD Bunch, did it feel unattainable? How did you realize it was a possibility? What was the process going from idea to launch? So when you first go through all of those one at a time, the first part was, did it feel unattainable? I actually no. I think that's one of those things where, since it was something that I was going to produce myself, and, things like YouTube are a thing, I definitely thought that, sorry, I got distracted. Too many noises. I knew that, like, I could put a show out there on YouTube, right? Like, how big of a success it's going to be, I have no idea. But at least the process of being able to put things out there, I knew I could do. It's totally different from, you know, like auditioning for something else where, you know, your fate is totally in the hands of someone else's decisions. So I knew that I could create it, but actually taking the plunge from vague idea to actually making it is, I think the attainability had a lot more to do with, like, me keeping myself going and can I plan all of this out? The process really from the idea to launch was an evolution over the course of my last 2 years at university, because I was getting a degree in psychology, and that was when towards the end of the degree, I was trying to figure out, well, what am I going to do with this? You know, I know I want to do things that are BPD related, and I still really love performing, but I have no idea how that's going to turn into anything. And I think through a lot of different conversations with people, I found that I really wanted to create something that felt almost like, and this is going to sound so cheesy, but like watching almost like the relationships you see like on Friends, where it's like this group of people who all get on, but like there's something different about each of them that someone in the audience can latch onto and be like, oh, I relate to that person. You know, like I'm a Xannie, I'm a Georgette, I'm an Alex, I'm a Darren, you know, like that kind of thing when watching whatever I was going to create. And that was kind of what started the BPD bunch, and what actually got me to start it. I had COVID and I was bored and I was on the couch and like so sick and was just like, all right, I don't have the energy to sew. That's too much work. I am just gonna jump in and do this instead. And I did. And then now here we are. So it's kind of crazy how things just turn out like that, I guess. Okay, so there was a question in the previous video that somebody sent to me. It says, I was watching the video about emptiness and I find myself struggling with how to manage because I don't think it's codependency, but I feel like it's definitely adjacent. Any tips or thoughts? I'm not sure I understand the question entirely. What codependency has to do with emptiness is, if you are the person who asked the question, if you could explain what you mean by that. Are you talking about like the emptiness somehow leads to the sense of codependency in relationships? If so, let me know. I do think that emptiness can be something that we try to fill with other people. And I think if that is what you were talking about, I would say it's important to, some of these things sound cheesy, right? Like mindfulness is one of those things like where before I really started practicing it, I was like, oh my gosh, mindfulness, blah, blah, blah. But really, I mean, I think being really mindful of yourself and other people and recognizing when you feel empty, maybe if you have an urge to fill that up with someone else, being really, really mindful of that. And what are some things that you can do where you're not relying on someone else to fill you up? And that's something that I still struggle with. You know, that's not something that just goes away, but I think the more aware you are of what's going on in your body, the easier it is to separate yourself from other people. Because, you know, we recently did an episode on friendship, and that's not out yet, but one of the parts of the conversation that we were having was this concept that it's hard to know sometimes where your emotions end and someone else's begin. And I think that's one of those things that, you know, many of us with BPD struggle with, that we'll be working on for a long time, knowing where you end and someone else begins and how to rely on yourself and have a relationship. It's a constant balance. And as frustrating as it is, I think the answer really just is practice. All right. Next question. If anyone has any other questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat. I know we probably lost a couple via the headset debacle. I am so sorry about that. Are you close with anyone outside the cast who also has BPD? What is that relationship like? So I have a lot of friends outside the cast who have BPD. One of the things that kind of got me thinking about doing something for the BPD community was in 2017, I started kind of documenting my journey on my own Xannabelle page, and I started making friends that way. And one of the things that I did sort of briefly was like an informal, like, almost like the Big Brothers, Big Sisters sort of setup, but BPD. So it was like, if somebody came to me and had like a question or something, it was almost like a mentee mentorship relationship. And a lot of those relationships that started out that way ended up evolving into real equal friendships. And what are those relationships like? I think they're the best. I think I really value having a lot of people in my life who have BPD and experience a lot of the same things that I do, because we speak a different language sometimes. Like, we say things that don't necessarily make logical sense, but make emotional sense. And there's something special about knowing people who, you can say really emotional things to them and they're not gonna freak out at you or worry that, you're gonna do something nuts. They'll just be like, oh yeah, man, same. I totally know what you're talking about. So yeah, that's what those relationships are like. They're really validating and supportive. And, I do think I try to be careful not to overextend myself, because it's easy to want to like help everyone and be really involved in their lives. Especially, I feel like a lot of people with BPD, like, once we start to get a little bit better, we're like, I'm gonna help everybody else do the exact same thing. But having some boundaries and realizing that everyone is kind of in charge of their own destiny can be helpful. Like, we're there to support each other, but we're not gonna, like, it's not that we're not going to, you can't actually save someone else, right? I think the urge to try to do that is there, but our recoveries are all our own. And while none of us can do it alone, the work has to come from each of us. So I think that's just one of the things I try to be careful about, because I never want to be in a position where I'm trying to do the work for somebody else, because they got to do it. And now I'm talking in circles. So I'm going to move on to the next question. As a business owner and podcaster with BPD, how do you manage your stress and self-doubt? That's a great question. I think it's one of the things that's a work in progress, because it's very easy for me to sort of run on inspiration. And then when the inspiration well runs dry, then I'm kind of like running on fumes. And I'm actually, to be completely honest, in sort of a space like that right now, where there's just this beginning of the year slump. Like many people with mental health challenges, I go through a period of a dip in the winter. And then during that period, my inspiration tends to go, and it's like, how do I move forwards? Because, I'll look at my day and be like, dang it, I didn't do as much stuff as I was doing, when I had the same things on my to-do list in November. Now I'm getting like a third of the things done in the same amount of time. And that does tend to overwhelm me. But I remind myself that, as somebody who also struggles with ADHD, being consistent at all is a challenge. And so just the fact that I am putting one foot in front of the other and I'm not giving up, even when I don't feel like things are amazing, I think that's kind of what gets me through it. And also knowing that it does get better, right? It's not, whatever moment of stress is not going to last forever. And I guess that's the best I got. You know, it's like many other things. It's a work in progress. All right. This is basically the same question. I'm going to pass that one. What do you consider to be the best thing about living in New Mexico? Hands down, sunshine. Sunshine is the best thing about living in New Mexico. I love the sun. And as sort of an extension of that, we have the best sunsets. I highly recommend going, if you have not like gone, just do a Google search of like New Mexico sunsets and take a like download all those pictures and make them your like computer screensaver because they are gorgeous. Also green chili. That's one thing that like people who don't live here are like, what is wrong with you people? But we are obsessed with green chili and it is amazing. It's amazing. I am serious. It's amazing. All right. Next question. Ooh, advice for someone who just got diagnosed. I would say breathe. And, you know, take comfort in the fact that there are more and more different forms of treatment that are coming out. You know, like DBT has helped a lot of people, but it is not necessarily the be all end all. And, you know, Alex Stein, who is one of the cast members on the show, and we frequently like send papers to each other and are talking about different things. And I think one of the things to really look forward to through all the research that I've looked over is just that there's a lot of interest in coming up with ways to help people with BPD. And I just think there's a lot of hope. So, you know, if you are newly diagnosed, breathe. You know, it is a lot of work to move forwards and create a life that you are happy with. And it is possible, and more ways to deal with it are sort of coming to the surface. So yeah, I guess that's what I would say. I'll also, you can ask questions into the chat. I'm just going through the ones that we got on Instagram earlier today, or over the past few days. Side note, isn't that a weird, I don't know if anyone else experiences this, but I always feel this strange urge to be like completely and 100% honest. I'm like, oh, that wasn't exactly 100% the truth. I should change that. But then you end up oversharing, and that's always an awkward time. All right. If you could go back in time and change the things you regret the most, would you do it? Why or why not? I don't think so. I don't think I would change them. I mean, I think at the moment when I felt really crappy about them, like in the moment, I probably would have said like, yes, I want to change this. But even the things that I regret made me who I am today. And I guess I'm one of those people that has such a fear of the unknown that I would rather go forwards with the lessons that I've learned from the things that I've done in my life, even the bad things, or even the things that I regret. You know, I know what I learned from them, and I don't know what I would have learned from them if they hadn't happened or if I'd done something differently. So that's one of those things where I'm like, you know, I'm happy with the decisions that I've made in life, I think. You know, even the ones I regret, which is a weird thing to say, but I don't think I'd want to go back and change them. I certainly would not want to undo all of the bananas crazy times of BPD, because I mean, I wouldn't be able to have the show, right? If I had gotten help way earlier, I wouldn't be here doing this, because I wouldn't have had as many lessons or things to share. So yeah, I'm glad somebody asked that question now, because I'm like, I'm pretty happy with all the things, even the things that went wrong. All right. Oh, best and most challenging aspects of running your own business / project. That's a great question. So I think that one's from the chat. I would say being my own boss is probably, like, being able to make all the decisions is one of the best aspects of being a business owner and having your own project. It's like, not having to ask somebody else, like, can I do this, right? Just having an idea and being like, I'm gonna go for it. Of course, I care what people think about it. I'm trying to do something to help people, so it's not like I'm not going to take their thoughts into consideration. But I think being able to just go for it and put something out there, and specifically the show, I would say doing the episodes is my favorite part. I think being able to chat with everyone and have these really insightful conversations. I mean, I feel like I've experienced some exponential growth in myself just since we started the show, because I've learned so many things about myself through hearing everyone else's story. And I would say that also the worst part of running your own business is having to make all the decisions, because there's nobody else to blame when things go wrong. Like, sometimes I would love to just be like, oh dang, it's so-and-so's fault, but it's like, well, it's all on me. So I would say that that's the hardest part of the business overall. And in terms of like this project specifically, I think the part I like the least is editing the episodes. Because, I sit there, and especially season 2 is going to be really good, but I gotta say, like, our cast has gotten better and better at expressing what they want to say and saying more insightful things. So then now I'm having a harder time sitting there going, oh, what can I cut out? Like, how do I put this together without, like, sacrificing anything that's good? So definitely being in the editing room is the most agonizing, but it is very rewarding too. So, I don't know. It's one of those things. I think I like even all the parts that I don't like, if that makes sense. Oh, there's another question in the chat. Did you ever watch the show Crazy Ex-Girlfriend? If so, what did you think? And, I'll just answer it, because yes, I haven't seen all of it all the way through. I am getting towards the end, and I loved it. For anyone who hasn't seen it and knows what we're talking about, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend is a show about a woman who, the premise is she moves halfway across the country to pursue a guy that she sees on the street that she once dated back at camp. And it comes out much later in the show that she has borderline personality disorder. And I mean, I think there were a couple of things, like, during the diagnosis section of the show that didn't seem totally accurate. Like, I think the examples they chose to support her diagnosis were maybe not, like, the best moments, because there were other moments that were better. But I thought the show was great. I thought it was a pretty accurate portrayal. And Alex Stein on the show, she's always like, I always wanted to have Rebecca Bunch as my friend, and now knowing Xannie, I feel like I do, which is funny, because when I started watching, she was the one that got me on the show, and then I started watching it and I thought, oh gosh, this really is a lot like me. So, yeah. What was the second part? Oh, I think you should if musicals don't grind you. Oh no, I love musicals. I am one of those odd people who even like the musical Cats. And I know that I'm going to turn a lot of people off with that, but I'm sorry, I can't help it. I used to make all my friends, like, dance to the Cats musical songs when we were little, so yeah, I'm a big musicals fan. Oh, speaking of, do you like dogs or cats more? I like cats more, but I also like, I mean, I love all pets and animals, so, you know, it's hard to choose. I feel like now that I'm like on camera and on the spot, I feel bad. Like I don't, if my dogs are listening, I also love them, but my baby cat is the best. I love him. He's so fluffy, and if he were here, I would grab him and show everybody, but he's not, so alas. Next question. Oh, this one was already asked, basically. What was the hardest part of making the show? Was editing. Although, now that I'm thinking about it, I think another hard part is knowing how to communicate to a group of people who've all been diagnosed with BPD, because I worry a lot that the way I'm communicating feedback or even just like planning stuff, you know, there's a lot of sort of text exchanges. And I do spend a lot of time worrying about how does this come across? Like, are the other cast members hearing this in the way that I think it sounds in my head? I also definitely struggle to keep things concise because, as I said earlier, I have a tendency to over-explain because it's like, they must understand the complete and entire truth. So I'm trying to be good about being concise. As I've been sitting here talking for 30 minutes, clearly I'm not that great at it, but oh, I did already answer this one. What was your favorite part of making the BPD bunch? Being on camera. I do think, though, one other thing I can add is I love getting comments from people. We get comments regularly, especially over on our Instagram account. Like, people send me messages. And there was one person who said that we had inspired them to go to therapy, which was like really exciting because one of my goals in life is to reduce the suicide rate of people with BPD by at least 1% during my lifetime. But that's not a job title. So I don't really know exactly how to do that. And that's part of what I'm trying to accomplish with the show, is get a group of people together who have similar experiences, and in the hopes that anyone who watches it who has BPD or knows someone who has BPD can have some hope that it is possible to get better, so that hopefully people who think of ending their time on this earth, that they have a reason to change their minds and be here. So it always makes me really happy when I get messages from people and they're like, I'm doing better thanks to the show, you know, like, so. Alrighty. Ooh, this is not at all BPD related. What is your favorite style of clothing to design/make? So, for those of you who don't know, I am a seamstress as well as the creator of this show. I haven't had a whole lot of time to devote to my sewing business since I started this. But I don't really have a like favorite style in terms of my customers. Really, I just my husband, I guess, is making his way over. So he's gonna say hello to the world.
I heard something about a style of clothing.
And you're in a suit, so you thought you'd come say hi? Yeah.
Currently, your favorite style is mine, right?
Yeah. Well, it is is this part of your free guy costume?
No.
I think that he has this whole outfit looking like Guy from the Free Guy movie, and I think it looks good. You're making me so uncomfortable.
You got this. You're doing great.
Thank you. Okay, so favorite style of clothing to make. I think really I just love doing custom work. My favorite style is something I've never done before. I really don't like making the same thing over and over again. And that was the biggest reason why I didn't want to go into sewing as a job in the first place, is because I thought that I was just going to have to make the same thing over and over again and that I would get so bored. So really my favorite thing is custom work. If somebody brings me a design that like 10 other people have said there's no way I'll make that, I'm like, yes, bring that to me. I will figure it out, because I love overcoming like sewing challenges. It's one of my favorite things in the entire universe. Looks like there's another question in the chat, and it is the plan with the BPD bunch to keep coming out with new seasons, or do you see it turning into something else? Well, for now, I'm going to keep coming out with new seasons. I think there's always more to talk about, and it's interesting, you know, all the episodes, even just for season 1 for the symptoms, I feel like we could have gone on, like we could have done several episodes for each one of them. And as we keep growing, we can go back and revisit some of those topics and do them again. I'm not opposed to it evolving into something else though. Like one of the things that I think would be really cool, as sort of part of our BPD Bunch Brunch series, would be to do episodes where we're like doing actual like activities together. I mean, albeit at a distance, because we live all over the world, and you know, it would be kind of challenging to get everyone together. Although if we could get everyone together, that would be amazing. That would be great. That would be so cool to get like the cast on a couch together. That would just make me so happy. Y'all have no idea. So yeah, I mean, I have a lot of ideas, and I hope that I get to do all of them. There was one question I forgot to write down, which was, what was your dream for the show? And really, I think I just want to help people make the best use of the one life that they have. I mean, presumably we all have one life, like, depending on what you believe, as far as anyone knows, we have one life, right? So, under that assumption, my dream for the show is just that it helps people to do that, to make the best use of their one life. And if there are different ways, you know, if there are different directions that the show can go to bring that about, I am all for it. You know, I mean, I think one of the things too is I want to reach people at all levels of recovery. Right now, we're kind of focused on sort of the earlier things, but if we had, you know, the funding to have like a team of people so somebody could help me with editing, I would love to do like another either like set of episodes or something that's geared towards people in like later recovery and sort of the fine tuning aspects of BPD recovery, because I feel like the work doesn't end, it just changes. Like in the beginning, a lot of it is just trying to be able to not fall apart and to be able to maintain some semblance of normalcy and sanity. But then later stuff, you know, it's fine-tuning things like, how do I know when somebody's being genuine or when they're lying to me? Or like, how do I make decisions about response to, you know, somebody at work saying something to me, and like in a higher level kind of way? Because I don't know about all of you watching, but for me, I feel like a lot of early recovery was just like, get out of situations that could set me off. But I don't want to do that forever. So I think it would be really cool to have some like high level recovery videos about, you know, what happens when you get to the part where you look pretty okay, but you still have this these internal struggles. I feel like I'm constantly having an existential crisis, to be honest. Have you thought about bringing on a therapist? Or do you like sticking with the relatable peer discussion? So several of I would say I've already done that. So Alex and Lena are two of our cast members who are therapists. I do have plans to like interview a couple of people in expert positions like as guests, and we've already filmed one episode for season 2 where we got somebody who works in substance use disorders to come talk about that. And we actually had 2 people. One is someone who works in substance use disorders and has BPD, and someone who works in it and does not. But I think for the BPD bunch to be the BPD bunch, our cast members will always be people who have lived experience of borderline personality disorder. Now, if they happen to also be therapists, then that's a bonus. So, but yeah, that is what I have to say to that. Any last questions? I can sit here and sing a song for you. Not really. I don't have anything prepared, so it would be really awkward. I have gotten really into just singing what I'm doing. Like, I'm drinking water with tea and chia seeds. It's really yummy, yum, yum, yum. All right. Well, if no one has any other questions, I have gotten through all of the ones that I was prepared with. So I guess we'll wrap it up. So thank you everyone so much for watching. It was really, really fun to be here and chat with you all. One of the things that I did want to make sure that I show you before I go. Oh, dang it. I should have had it over here. Hold that thought. I will be right back. I'm not going to go far. I just have to say, so we have a Patreon, right? I mentioned that at the beginning of this. And, to anyone who joins our top tier, the BPD Besties, before April 1st, you get this really cool t-shirt that has our logo on it, and it says BPD Besties, and it has a note from every single one of our cast members on it. So if you want one, you should join our top tier on Patreon and do that. So that's it. That's all I have for you today. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. We will be back next week with a bunch of different cast members. I have no idea who all are going to be here, but we'll definitely put information about it up on our Instagram. But we're just going to be talking about what to look forward to in season 2, because in season 1, we went through the 9 symptoms. And so what are some of the things we're going to talk about in season 2? Well, you can find out next week at our live then. And in 2 weeks from today, season 2 drops. And the first episode is all about diagnosis stories. So there's a little nugget for you for getting started. So thanks, everybody. We will see you next week. Bye.